Alright, so the next main topic is about your purchasing function or purchasing management. So yeah, here you need to understand that purchasing is not a simple task wherein you just buy a product, buy something at a price. Purchasing with respect to material management means a lot of other things as well. Okay, now purchasing of things are normally done by four categories of people. The first one is your consumers. Okay, then comes your middlemen, then the government agencies, and finally the manufacturer. Okay, consumers purchase things like when do you go and buy, why do you go and buy things from a local supermarket? For your own consumption, for your own direct consumption. Okay, and then the middleman, which is your wholesaler, retailer. We have learned all about, these people who are there in the distribution channel, which means to say that those people who stand in between the manufacturer and the consumer. Okay, your retailer is someone who purchases from the manufacturer or from the wholesaler and sells it to the customer. So your retailer or your wholesaler is the middleman. Alright, so what does it do? They buy it from manufacturer and they sell it to the customer. Okay, and then you have government agencies. Government agencies also engage in buying certain materials. Maybe they buy it from abroad, they buy it from people, anything can be the case. Okay, those purchases are normally meant for seeing it to it that the welfare of people are being taken care of. Okay, and finally you have the manufacturers. They purchase raw materials so that they can convert the raw materials into finished goods. So these are the general four categories of people who engage in purchasing. Okay, so here, like I mentioned, purchasing is where you simply buy something at a particular price. Okay, but when you talk about the business aspect, you can call it a business activity or an economic activity, because here you're purchasing something in return of some money or some value. Okay, so we rightfully term it as a business activity or an economic activity, which helps you in getting the raw material, equipment, and various other components to your organization so that you can do your production. Is it clear to you? Okay, so when you try to get the materials, the equipment, the different other components which is required in order to ensure smooth production in your organization or factory, we call it as purchasing. Now another term, okay, which sounds similar to purchasing is procurement, which means to say that procurement is a broader term. Okay, purchasing is just you buy something from someone else and you have it with you. But procurement is used as a broader term because it involves buying, checking whether this is the right thing, sending it across to other departments. All of them, the broad term which we use is procurement. But with respect to material management, in order to make things simple, we call it as the purchasing function. We don't call it as procurement. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, the act of buying an item at a price is called as purchasing. Procurement is where you have different other processes, inventory control, inspection, all along with purchasing function. So according to Westing and Fine, please read the definition. Purchasing is a business activity directed to secure the materials, supplies, equipment which is required in the operation of an organization. So like I mentioned, when you get the material, component and equipment, in order to ensure that production happens smoothly in your organization, we call that as purchasing. Now, yeah, we learn about purchase procedure. Purchase procedure are the general steps which you follow to ensure that the purchasing department works fine. Okay. Now, there are two forms of purchasing. You have centralized purchasing and decentralized purchasing. Okay. So it's given in the bold version. You can read through them later, which means to say that For example, I have some 6 to 7 departments in like 4 to 5 departments in my organization. I've got a finance department, marketing, sales, office admin, and so on and off. And then I have a purchasing department also. Okay. When this purchasing department ensures that all the requirements of the organization of the other departments are being catered by this purchasing department, which means to say that every other department would place the order with purchasing department, because only the purchasing department has the authority to purchase the product from outside. That is your centralized purchasing, which means to say all the purchasing which is to happen in any point inside the organization is all done by purchasing department. Okay. Now, the other one is decentralized purchasing, which means to say, quite contrary to the other one, that is the centralized purchasing, the purchasing department won't be performing all the purchasing function. They would delegate it to some other departments as well, which means to say the office department, for example, can go out and buy their own stationery. They don't have to go through the purchasing department in order to get their things purchased from anyone else. Okay, so they don't have to depend on the purchasing department in order to buy the stationery. They can buy it on their own. So when you try to disperse your purchasing function, or you try to delegate or give it to someone else for the purchasing function, we call it as decentralized purchasing. Okay, now there are certain, I hope the points are clear. If I'm too fast, let me know, and not only in the comment section, but you can text me, that's okay. Now moving on, we have to learn about certain points which highlight the importance of purchasing. So first one, the lion's share of material cost. So in material management, under importance factor itself, we learned that material cost is a major proportion when it comes to the total cost. Like how I gave you an example of 60% of the total cost coming as material cost, in the same way the point is highlighted here. Okay, material cost is one thing which you can use to control your cost to maximize your profit. All those examples were given. Please refer back, refer to the previous presentation in order to get the point again. You might forget, so it is okay, you can go back and refer, which means to say that a huge sum of money is given to the purchase department in order to get the materials and other components for the organization. Any fraudulent activity done by the purchasing department, for example, the person who's in charge of purchasing, he says, okay, he tells the company, I have spent around 1 lakh from the money allocated to purchase a product. But what if he has made only 50,000 and has used the rest of the money for his own personal needs? Okay, that is where the purchasing department or the purchasing manager has engaged in fraudulent activities. This is not to be encouraged, because most of the amount from the profits and from other income sources of the company goes into purchasing. So when you understand your material cost is going to be one of the major costs in among all other costs, it is very important for the purchasing manager to not engage in any fraudulent activities which would be against the interest of the organization. The next one is impact of wrong supplier chosen. So in this portion, in this part of the chapter, we would learn about how to select the best supplier. Okay, now if you compromise, or suppose you go for the wrong evaluation, you end up having the wrong evaluation about which supplier to be selected. For example, when you say that you want to purchase something, when everyone gets to know that the company is looking for a very good supplier, there would be other suppliers who are trying to impress you. They'll be like, our goods are top quality and all that. You walk into a normal textile shop, you ask for something, and they say, they give you the product and they tell you the price. You feel the price is too high. You tell them, no, I can get it from any other shop. So they'll say, You ask anyone in commercial street, you ask anyone in Bangalore, no one will give you at a lesser price like how I am giving, because this is the best quality in the whole of Bangalore. So they make all these claims which in which they are trying to persuade you to buy the product. So in the same way, when an organization tries to get out, like tries when the information is out that the organization is looking for a supplier who is ready to give to sell their material to them, many suppliers would come in to they'll try to contact the organization. Many of them can be giving the wrong claims. So you have to understand whether those claims of these suppliers about quality and other perspective is true or false. You need to check their past record. You need to check about people who have already engaged in contracts, whether they had a bad experience or a good experience. If you overlook all these factors, if you don't even bother to check on these additional factors, you might choose the wrong supplier. You choose the wrong supplier, they don't supply goods of good quality and everything, your production is affected. So rather, why do all this? First, see, well, take time and check whether the supplier that you're choosing satisfy all criteria, whether they are making the right claims in order to get the product. Next is zero defect product, which can be related, because if you get the wrong supplier, you get products of less quality, your final product is going to have a problem. For example, especially in the food industry, say for example a cake manufacturing unit, if it uses the wrong flour to make the cake, the less quality to make the less quality flour, or what else do you, maybe baking powder, I'm not sure. So when you use the less quality ones, your cake would taste less good compared to the other cake which is made using good quality raw materials. Okay, so in order to check about not compromise on the quality of the product and anything else, check that your material is offering you a good quality. Only if the materials are of good quality, your product will come out good. It would come out with less defect. Is it clear to you? Okay. Then wiser utilization of working capital. This can be related to the point which I was sharing in the point called lion's share of material cost, the first point. Here it means to say, since most of the money than any other department is being allocated to the purchase department, they have to make good use of this. Okay, they need to see, we have a right price concept in purchasing, which we would learn about, which says that you need to procure those products which come at a lesser price. All right, at a lesser price, because you are trying to cut down the cost, but that does not mean you compromise on the quality also. There are certain products which they say are very cheap, but in terms of quality they might be really poor. So you cannot take the risk, because if you do that, your end product would also be having a problem. Even though you are using the highest amount of funds allocated to any other department, if you are having the highest number of, the purchasing department is always given the highest amount of fund than any other department. Yes, you should go for things which would reduce the cost, but again, you cannot compromise on the quality. So working capital, or the short-term cash which is given to the department, yes, we are looking at reduced cost, but that does not mean you buy whatever is there in the market. Okay, because it would have a long-term effect. Your products don't come out good, your profit is also going to have a problem. So these are general things, but again, they are of much importance. Okay, so wider utilization of working capital means to say that when capital is being when materials are being taken in for a purchasing department should be well aware that most of the funds of the organization are going to the purchasing department than any other department. So they need to effectively use it, not by going for cheap products, but going at a low cost, but only for those raw materials which offer better quality in the market. Okay, best use of storage space. In the scope of material management, we learned about facilities which are required as stores department or a store room. okay, in order to store all your raw materials, partly finished goods, office supplies, and other finished goods as well. So you need to effectively use your storage space. So I gave you an example wherein a storage facility might have just 500 units for a capacity of 500 units, but if 200 units are coming on the next day, it is very difficult to accommodate. So you need to see to it that in order to initiate your purchasing and see that it happens in a smooth way, you need to check on your storage space. You have to check whether you have enough facilities to offer storage to a greater amount of products, whether you are using up the storage facility. You cannot leave some area as abandoned. You cannot give it a deserted look. You have to effectively use it. And then build the image of the company. So it can be related to your zero defect products. Since most of the products which are manufactured are consumer goods, you have to see in what way you can keep the customers happy. So for this, what can you do? You have to check that the products which is being given to the customers are good in terms of quality. Okay, some customers are there who are very much brand conscious. Okay, once they are very happy with the brand, they continuously use it, and there are very less chances that they might settle for something else. So in order to retain your customers, in order to have a good market share in the competitors thing, you need to always check whether your products are free from any defect or they do not compromise on the quality. Once your customers are happy, it is very less chances that they will get back to your no, once your customers are not happy, there are very less chances that the customer would try to purchase your product again. They would have lost their trust in the brand. Okay, so that would have a long-term effect on the organization, because then if such a issue arises, like if for one time you try to compromise, for like one period of time you think, okay, it's okay to buy less quality material, your product lands up with a lot of defect, the goodwill is gone, the good name is gone. So it is very difficult to get it back. So this would have a huge impact on your profits as well. So in order to build the image of the company, your purchasing is to be given prior importance. Scientific purchasing reduces production losses. By scientific purchasing, like I mentioned, this means you need to purchase the products at a right quantity, right quality, right time, and a right price. If you don't do this, okay, hold on. It's 8. Okay, not a problem. If you don't do this, you have to bear the losses. That is, if I don't get the material on time at the factory and not if I cannot feed in the raw material at the right time, there's a delay in the production. You might feel, okay, it's just a delay. No, it adds on to the cost of the firm. If you want your production to happen smoothly, see that the purchase of materials happen on a prompt basis. See that they are delivered in the right quality, right quantity, there is no shortage, right place, right time, and everything. So all these different rights which we would learn later as principles of scientific purchasing have to be given much importance. Improvement in routine production control. Production happens every day. Now you need to understand the purchasing department has to go from one place to another, from one department to another, or from one stage of production to another stage of production, to check whether raw materials, whether there are any shortage or any excess of it. Okay, so they need to do this field work, because more than what the books say or what does the records say, if you go and inspect on a personal level, you would understand a better picture of it. Okay, so sometimes management requires you to go and check how whether there's a shortage in the material, whether the material is adequately available, whether there's an excess, whether something has to be disposed of, whether there are any wastages and all that. So those have to be personally checked, for which the purchasing department would get involved in checking whether the production is happening as per control, whether there are any wastages, whether materials are adequately available. So it actually advises the management about how the things are there, like what is the stage or what is the uh, status of materials in the factory and what can be done to reduce the cost. So all those advisory sort of things are given by the purchase department. Then effective implementation of purchase program. In order to effectively implement the purchasing program, for example, even if it is a centralized or a decentralized, the purchasing department can only function if other departments coordinate with them. Okay, which means to say only if they have good cooperation with the other departments, only then they would be able to fulfill their purchasing function. Alright, purchasing program is for other departments. They are purchasing things for other departments only. So they need to see to it other departments are also in line with their thought process, with their objective, so that they can effectively work towards the function of purchasing. Then successful future planning, which means to say in order to see or to, for example, I say for example for a lot of time, but still, uh, there were three motives as to why we need material management. You can go back to your previous presentation, which says that you need to have a transaction motive, which means production and sales should happen. For that, you have to get the material. Then we had the precaution motive, which stated that if there are changes in demand or supply, if there are change in the cost and all that, we have to stock up other material. For example, during this time of quarantine, we had to engage ourselves in buying different goods for your home, at least to survive for 2 or 3 weeks, right? People ended up buying a lot of things because they feared a shortage. They knew that because it's a lockdown period, it is very difficult to go and get these products, right? So even a purchase department would understand that maybe the cost of these raw materials are going to go high, maybe next month, or there's going to be a different change in the demand, or we might face a shortage. Maybe next month the raw material is going to run out in the market, we might not be able to find it, so it is better to buy more of it and keep it with ourselves. So all this future planning is given importance, because if future planning does not happen, see, future planning for the future might sound like a simple thing, but it's not for a purchasing department. If they don't do this, they have to face the consequence. What are the consequences? Maybe in the following period of time, they might face a issue wherein material is not sufficient, or there is a shortage in the material due to which they can't do production. So these are the points as to why purchasing is very important with respect to material management. Hope the class was fine. Please answer the MCQs after this session. And for your information, we are done with material management. We will move on to purchase management. So these concepts are related, but you have to separately study it for the sake of exams as well as your own understanding. Thank you. Have a good Sunday.